Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping into one of the wildest financial stories ever told. It's about how one man with one massive bet literally broke a bank and walked away with $1 billion. You could call it the ultimate financial heist. Okay, let's kick things off with this quote because it really sets the scene perfectly. Think of it like a tug of war. A central bank's job is to pull against the market to keep the rope, the currency's value, steady. But what happens when someone convinces the entire market to drop the rope all at once? To really get this story, you first have to understand the vault they were trying to crack. Back in the early 1990s, Europe had this system called the European Exchange Rate Mechanism, or ERM for short. Now, the whole point of the ERM was pretty straightforward. Stop currencies from bouncing all over the place. By locking them together at fixed rates, the idea was to make business across Europe way more stable and predictable for everyone. It was basically a promise. The big banks made a guarantee that, say, one British pound would always get you 2 German marks. No ifs, ands, or buts. This peg was the bedrock of the whole system. But as we're about to find out, it was also its biggest weakness. Right. So, like any vault that's supposed to be unbreakable, this one had a hidden flaw. Because here's the thing, governments can fix numbers on a spreadsheet, but they can't always control what's happening in the real world. So what happens when a country's economy starts to change? Let's say Germany's economy is booming, and suddenly the real value of a pound should be more like 2.5 marks. Well, the official promised rate is still stuck back at 2. And right there, you've got this dangerous gap opening up between the promise and reality. This puts the Bank of England in a really tough spot. To defend that old artificial rate, it has to start selling its own pounds to try and force the value back down. It's literally fighting against economic gravity. And this is where it becomes a total nightmare for the central bankers. See, the ERM wasn't just about the pound and the mark. It was the pound versus the French francs, the Italian lira, all of them. So trying to defend just one of these fixed rates could mess up all the others. It was an incredibly fragile juggling act. And this is the question that blows the whole thing wide open. How long can you defend a promise when everyone is starting to suspect it's just a bluff? The answer to that question is the crack in the vault, and it was just sitting there, waiting for someone to find it. And now, let's bring in our mastermind, investor George Soros. He looked at this system, saw the flaw that everyone else was trying to ignore, and he didn't see a problem. He saw a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. His theory was actually pretty simple. The British pound was being propped up at a value that was way too high for what the British economy could actually support. He believed the Bank of England's promise was fragile and that if you pushed it hard enough, it would break. So he decided he was going to be the one to do the pushing. The plan was breathtakingly bold, but also incredibly simple. Step 1. Borrow a ton of British pounds. We're talking billions. Step 2, immediately sell all of them for a stronger currency, like the German mark. Step 3 is the key. Create panic. When the market sees this huge sell-off, everyone else starts selling too, and the pound's value just collapses. Then you just waltz back in, buy up the now super cheap pounds to pay back your loan, and you keep the massive difference. So with the plan ready to go, Soros and his fund launched the attack. They started borrowing and selling British pounds on a scale nobody had ever seen before. They were placing a multi-billion-dollar bet that the Bank of England would blink first. And he was clever about it. He didn't just sell in secret. He let everyone know what he was doing and why. He convinced other big-time investors that the pound just couldn't hold on. And that created a domino effect. As more and more people sold, the panic snowballed. Suddenly, the Bank of England wasn't just fighting George Soros, it was fighting the entire global market. It all came to a head on this one single day. The Bank of England threw everything it had at the problem, buying billions of pounds, jacking up interest rates, but it was no use. The wave of selling was just too big. By the end of the day, the promise was shattered. The vault door had been blown clean off. So, the bank was broken, the bet was won. What did the final score look like? The Bank of England had no other choice. They had to give up, pull the pound out of the ERM, and just let its value crash. To really see how this turned into Soros's massive payday, let's walk through a simplified example from our source material, just using some easy numbers. All right, so let's just imagine he starts by borrowing 1 billion pounds. And at the old exchange rate, let's call it 1 pound to 5 German marks, that gets him a cool 5 billion marks. Then, Black Wednesday happens. The pound collapses. Now, at the new rate, say 1 pound is only worth 3 German marks, Soros takes his 5 billion marks and converts them back. But this time, he doesn't get 1 billion pounds back, he gets 1.66 billion. And here's the beautiful part of the trade. He takes that money, pays back his original 1 billion pound loan, and he's left with an unbelievable profit. In our little example here, that's 166 million pounds, made practically overnight. His actual profit in the real world, it's estimated to be around $1 billion. But, and this is a really big but, there are two sides to this story. While Soros was celebrating one of the greatest trades in history, the cost of trying and failing to defend the pound fell to the British taxpayer. The estimated bill? Around 3 billion pounds. One person's incredible payday was a country's staggering loss. And that really leaves us with the big, fascinating question at the heart of all this. Was Soros just a predator exploiting a weakness for his own gain? Or did his bet expose a fundamental truth about a flawed system that was doomed to fail anyway? It's a debate about how markets work that people are still having today.